My name is Staff Sergeant Jonathan Bliss. I'm with the Nebraska Air National Guard. I joined January of 2011. I was still a senior in high school. I went through drill weekends until I left for basic training in June of 2011. I went to basic training at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. I graduated August 2011 from basic training. I was 322nd Training Squadron, Flight 534. Wasn't too bad. It was an interesting experience. Had some interesting memories from there. From basic training, I went to Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas. I was 362nd Training Squadron there. I completed my tech school there, graduated December of 2011, and I got back like the weekend or two before Christmas. From there, I started out on the flight line as a crew chief on KC-135s in Lincoln. I did a lot of temporary duty, TDY trips across the US. So my first big trip with the unit was to Geilenkirchen, Germany. It's a NATO base. That was June, July 2012, just a couple of weeks. And then after that, I deployed to Al Udeid Air Base, December, January of 2012 into 13. That is in Qatar. And June 2014, I moved to the ISODOX phase inspections. From there, I've deployed to Qatar again, 2016, and then November 2018 through March of 2019, I did in Kandahar, Afghanistan. And then 2021, February, March, I went to Guam. And then I moved to our Maintenance Operations Center in April of 2022. And that summer, July, August of 2022, I spent again in Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. So those are my big deployments that I've gone on. And I've just been in the Maintenance Operations Center ever since.
So do you ever regret enlisting? Or do you wish you would have gone a different path or?
There are days, to be honest, yes. Yeah, when working the jets, there's days I'm bruising knuckles and getting my hands caught up in gears and everything. I'm just like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? Honestly, so our jets are super old. They're the oldest jet we had was made in 1957, and our youngest one was made in 1963. We are the oldest, second oldest airframe in the Air Force. And one of the guys did an interview with our PR team one time, described it as aviation's version of working on classic cars. So a lot of guys, there are guys that are, this is just a 9-to-5 job, but there are some guys that we love doing this because it's keeping up history, the antiquities of it and everything.
What were your first days in service like?
Let's see, there was 2-3 weeks of solid classrooms. So we'd march into the classroom, lined up in a row, and just listen to lectures for 8 hours a day. It was 8 weeks of, this is how the Air Force operates, here's the bare minimum that you have to know. Right after enlisting, before I graduated high school, there was a lot of confusion showing up to drill weekends. I'm the only one in civilian clothing. Leadership didn't really know what to do with me, and they couldn't really have me go working on jets because I wasn't trained or anything. So it was sitting around twiddling my thumbs for those days. But after I got through basic and tech school, those days were a lot of hands-on job training. I worked a lot of extra hours to try and put myself forward to get a little more education and prove to my leadership that I wanted to be there and do this.
What were the rules like?
Oh, it depends on where you went. So home station, guard is a lot more different than active duty. You get some guard units that are very strict by the rules. They're gonna play like active duty, that everybody has to be addressed by rank and then name. Everything's got to be done by the books. You go to some guard units that, oh, that's Bob. His dad Bob was here too, and Bob Sr. before him was here. So some guard units like that. Lincoln's kind of like that. It's kind of it's a mix. We're professional, but we're not strict by the rules kind of thing. We call everybody by their name. Leadership, if E9 Chief Master Sergeant, we just call him Chief, things like that. Officers, of course, are, especially higher up officers, are regarded by their rank or addressed by their rank.
So like back to the enlisting, do you like, were you glad you enlisted at 17, or do you wish you would have like waited to like later on in your life?
I'm glad I enlisted at 17. I was more in shape to do basic training then. And honestly, I didn't know what else to do. As silly as that is to admit, a lot of people are like, yeah, I did it to serve my country. And some people are like, I'm in it for the college benefits. Honestly, wasn't sure what else to do, and this seemed like a good fit. Basic training, we had one guy who was 34 in our flight, and he was the oldest one in our flight, and everybody called him Pops.
What did you do in your free time that you had? Or
in basic training?
Yeah.
If there was any.
Yeah.
It was spent just cleaning things, making sure our beds are good to go, make sure our wall lockers are good to go. Deployment free time is a little more different. Depending on where you go, there will be different things to do. In Guam, while I was deployed, 2021, we were off base. We were roomed and lodged in a hotel down on the bay, in Tumon Bay. And so restaurants, everything off base was within walking distance pretty much. So that was pretty great. I bought some flippers and I did a lot of snorkeling out in the bay in my free time. That was also another thing, your schedule wise determines your free time. I've been on deployments where we worked one day on, one day off kind of thing. I've been on deployments, Guam that time around, we ended up doing first half like a 3 days on, 1 day off kind of thing and then I think we ended up as an every other day. Kandahar and Al Udeid, so they were working 12-hour shifts, more commonly either 4 days on, 1 day off, and then or 5 days on, 1 day off kind of thing. In Qatar, if you want to go off base, you have to get permission signed from your lowest CO, your lieutenants, and then just kind of like who you're going with, what's your method of transportation, timetable of when and where you're going kind of thing. So that's fun. That also depends on if you can get a ride off base, because base is a good half-hour drive from town. So if nobody was going off base, I just wander base. I traded a lot of patches. So it actually started in Kandahar. We get there and I see these Romanians with all these sweet looking patches. I put in an order and I bought 200 patches of the Doc's Dragon patch. And 120 some odd days later, I come home with 168 different patches and then like 20 duplicates. I got kind of well known around the Romanians, especially because there's a lot of them and I traded a lot with them. The Bulgarians, they didn't have very many patches. They had like 5 different patches, so I got all of those. Romanians were a lot more difficult to track down because some of them were like, we only get this one patch and I can't trade it away. So situations like that. There's one point where we left work a little bit early. It was our Friday night, so our leads let us go a little bit early, and so we took the bus back to the dorm area, and we get off the bus and there's this group of Romanians waiting at the bus stop, and I see a patch and I'm like, oh, you willing to trade, kind of thing. And like all the Romanians saw my patch and immediately the whole group was like, Dragon! It's the Dragon guy! I was just looking for one of the patch, but like 2 or 3 other guys were like, oh, take mine, like here, I want your Dragon patch kind of thing. Getting started trading patches was really nerve-wracking at first because I'm like, do these guys speak English? I don't know any Romanian. Like, this is nothing. The first couple of guys I ran into, I asked for their Romanian flag patch and their unit patch. Neither one of them spoke English at all. And so it kind of like turned into a point, like, just like, hey, you want to like trade? I tore mine off and I'm like, trade. And they're like, okay, kind of thing. I mean, sometimes that's all you can do. And I've traded with a lot of like other Air Force units I've been with, Guard units that I've traded with. I've got a patch from every branch. I've got one Space Force patch. Ran into them in Guam. And people ask me how many I've got, and honestly, I kind of stopped counting after like 250. I wouldn't be surprised if I probably got over 300 at this point. I've got like 4 different patch boards. My Air Force board is like 2/3 full. I've got a board with Army and then Navy and Marines on it. And then in Kandahar, I got some civilian contractors that were working for the Army. I got their patches. And I think I threw Space Force on that board as well. And then I've got one board that's specifically for the foreign board that's got Romanians, Bulgarians, Japanese, Australians, Canadians, Slovakian, and I just got 2 new patches yesterday from Mexico. Some guys went down last week to Mexico for an air show in Mexico City, and they brought them back, and they're like, Bliss, we thought you'd want these. It's always interesting. Some patches are quick, like, yeah, patch, here you go, and like, I don't get any more information, so any like insignia or their battalion, whatever, I have to Google myself. Some of them are like very in-depth, like, hey, let's stop and talk about this for a half an hour, and those are fun. Morale patches are always great too. In Kandahar, there's a A10 ramp next door to us, and I walked over there, and they had one guy who was in their aid shop, and he designed a patch for their A10s because they're transitioning out. They were transitioning, the Shark unit was leaving, I forget where they were from, and then there was the Tigers coming in, and there was a couple of weeks where both units were kind of there, just kind of the handover. So he made a Tiger Sharks, but Tiger Shirks, Sherks, and then it's like a shark with a tiger head coming out the side of it, just like with googly eyes, just silly things like that. Yeah. Romanians are fun to talk to. You run into these other countries and units that don't work with Americans very much, or it's their first time, it's their first deployment too. Those are fun. I've got one patch that the guys in the deed last summer made that were still there from, like, they got there right before Christmas. And so they made a small patch that looked like a Christmas ornament with baby's feet on it, and for their new guys it said baby's first deployment. So that was a lot of spare time deployed-wise. Romanians are fun to talk to. You run into these other countries and units that don't work with Americans very much, or it's their first time, it's their first deployment too. I've got one patch that the guys in the deed last summer that were still there from, like, they got there right before Christmas. And so they made a small patch that looked like a Christmas ornament with baby's feet on it, and for their new guys it said baby's first deployment. So that was a lot of spare time deployed-wise.
Did you make any like really close friendships?
Yeah. Let's see. I don't think I still have talked to anybody from basic training, but people from deployments are a big one. In Kandahar, that was a good one because the high stress environment kind of thing, that solidifies a lot of bonds. I worked with a lot of people from the Iowa Air National Guard as well who was there with us. I still talk to a few of those. There's other people from Washington State Guard, Alabama Guard. There's a couple of people I talked to. Maine was there. Sergeant King I was working with in LED in 2016. Hollinsworth from Alabama Guard.
What was like the hardest thing that was like hard to learn and figure out how to do in your job?
Oof. So we have a really large airplane, a very large airplane. Now, as time has gone on, our airframe is still technically classified as a heavy aircraft, but it's on the small side of the heavy aircraft. But it is still a lot of room to cover. And it's pretty much that, just trying to keep track of everything. So when I was working ISO docs, the way I told people, describe my job was, think of us as kind of like your general practitioner doctor. We look at a little bit of everything, and if there's something that we notice or have a question about outside of our expertise, we refer them to a specialist. There's hydraulics, fuels, electronics, etc. So just kind of like taking little bits from everybody, trying to like, this is what you're looking out for next time you look at this kind of thing. Just keeping track of everything. It's a lot of repetition With phase docs though, so I'm mechanical, I'm a hands-on learning type of guy. If I'm not doing it day in, day out, it's more likely I'm gonna forget how to do it. ISO docs, there are times where there's a month, 3 months between inspections where you're not touching an airplane. So that would be difficult. Other things, basic training, that stressful environment, it's a solid learning to control your emotions and your facial expressions, working with other people who vastly different cultures and whatnot is interesting. Basic training, we had one guy who was an immigrant from India. We had one guy from Boston. We had people from California. It was all over the place.
So did you pick the branch of service because your brother was in it, or would you have went a different route?
Partially, yes. It's a family thing for the most part. Also, everybody was like, Air Force is the easiest. And I'm like, okay then. Don't tell the Marines I said this. It's all the studies that I've seen. I don't know details of other branches, physical fitness tests, but everything I've seen, everybody's always said that their Air Force has got the hardest physical fitness, the basic fitness test. As far as getting into specialties, special forces, etc., that's another question. But our base fit test, I guess, is the hardest out there because we've got, from what I've seen in the Army, the same number of push-ups and sit-ups that they have to do, we have to do in half the time.
So how was the food during basic training?
Not bad.
Not bad?
Not bad. So when I went through basic training, it was the beginning of what a lot of people would say the softening of the Air Force. The Air Force has realized taking better care of its people, providing better food. Generations that went before me, like you had either zero contact or just writing letters to and from home. When I went through, we got our phones for half an hour on Sundays to make phone calls every Sunday. Flights before us did not have that option. And I guess basic training nowadays, they've got them like every day for half an hour. Some instructors let them have them all the time. I mean, there's rules and restrictions with them still, but yeah, basic training food wasn't bad. Peanut butter cups were the big thing because it's a protein-packed meal. So you march in there, and from the moment you sit down, you have like 3 or 5 minutes we had that we have to be in that chair. We have to be eating our food. Otherwise, I guess they had a lot of issues with people shoveling food and then throwing it up outside immediately kind of thing. And then who knows, like you've got several more hours till your next meal. People don't perform well like that. So you've got 3 minutes, 5 minutes, solid food eating. You have to eat. Peanut butter cups were a big one because I don't know why, but it's so delicious. They were so delicious. It's one of those things, that high stress environment that makes certain things just taste so much better. That was another thing. If you were caught sneaking them back into the dorm, that was a huge no-no. No food in the dorms because mice, bugs, whatever. Basic training, at the very end of basic training, the very last night we were there, our flight has what is called amnesty night, where instructor sits us down in the day room and says, all right, everybody, tell me your secrets. Zero repercussion. It's your last night here. You're getting on the bus here in a few hours. What did you guys get away with? And our flight was like, honestly, this wasn't so bad. Like, we didn't have too many issues. Medical issues are a big thing. A lot of people hide getting sick. A lot of people try to hide injuries because if you get injured bad enough, you get sent to a medical flight and you're on hold. Your basic training time pauses. You don't graduate with your flight, nothing. And nobody wants to spend a day longer than they want to in basic. My older brother's flight, I guess by the end of it, they had a full pharmacy hidden up in the ceiling tiles. So things like that happens a lot. People, our brother flight, I guess, had a steady ration of peanut butter cups hidden up in their ceiling tiles or in the back of someone's locker.
So were you like homesick a lot, or if so, how did you like deal with that or like cope your emotions? And
basic training homesickness hit hard because that was my first time really away from family. It got a lot easier because very regimented, strict schedule kind of thing kept me pretty well distracted. Deployments, yeah, It happens. The first couple of deployments, not bad at all. First deployment, wasn't married. Second deployment, I was married, but like she's an adult, like she can handle herself. My wife is fine. Deployments after that, having kids gets more difficult. So especially as they're getting older, it's a lot easier nowadays with FaceTime and video phone calls.
So, what was your most frightening experience?
Most frightening experience. The adrenaline rush, basic training initially. That one was a rush. Kandahar, Afghanistan. So we landed in country the 7th of November. 10 days later, I am sitting in the cockpit of an airplane doing a refuel. And all of a sudden, the CRAM goes off about 100 yards behind us. The CRAM are those turrets that shoot, I don't know how many thousand rounds per second. And they chase mortars across the sky. And it is loud. And it vibrates the ground a lot. To the point that I felt it vibrating in my seat 100 yards away. I'm on my headset with my team lead, and we're doing a refuel. And we both just kind of like froze. And we're like, okay. So they had prepared us for this, though, and they're like, all right, if CRAMs ever go off and you're sitting in the middle of a refuel, we're sitting on top of a giant gas tank. Shut everything down. The expediter truck came around, they picked us up, and we got to the bunkers right away. So that was nerve-wracking. So our shifts there were 12-hour shifts, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and this happened about 9 p.m. So I've already been on shift all day. I'm ready to go home. I'm tired. And CRAM fires off, and we're like, oh, all right. So we get to the bunkers, and everybody's, just sitting there like, ooh, CRAM's streaking across the sky and everything. Some people are cracking jokes, people are taking videos, and I'm sitting there in the middle of the bunker, just kind of like staying away from the ends on the bench. I'm just twiddling my thumbs, and some people are, playing games on their phones, just hanging out, and I'm like,
Where?
I left my phone on the plane. No! So it wasn't too bad. So as stressful and crazy as that sounds, we had, I don't know how many CRAMs around base, but a lot of them. I felt comfortable.
What do you think people should know before enlisting?
Before enlisting?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Like,
Going
what
blind.
advice would you give someone?
I would say talk to people, talk to their leadership, ask questions, get to know the people around them. That's a big one. Communication is a huge thing. If it's just your coworkers, worst comes to worst, you get to know how to work with them better, know what buttons not to push in a stressful environment, what buttons to press when you're bored and sitting there, things you get along with, just the general bonding with coworkers, talking to your leadership if they're available, getting to know what things are available in the area, kind of things like that.
What was your favorite place you went?
Kandahar, hands down. So, as crazy as that sounds, so I've been to Hawaii, I've been to Guam, I've been to Germany, I've been to England, Greece, Spain. Those places are great. But Kandahar, oh my God, the food was the best DFAC food I've ever had. And just working with the people there, the camaraderie, just fun. Obviously, we couldn't go off base, so it was more of a you make do with what you have kind of thing. They had a couple of shops and whatnot for like local items, and then on Sundays they had a bazaar / farmers market where locals came on base and sold their stuff. I bought a rug. There was one night, I can't remember if it was first or second rotation that came through. So Nebraska went in for 60 days initially, and I volunteered to do a following 60 days and take up a spot for another unit that took over for us, for Nebraska, after Nebraska left. There was one night, mortar attack, CRAMs going off, and everything kind of dies down. And we're on the bus, like, going back to the dorms because shift change and everything. You know, we might be under attack, but we still got to do shift change. We still got to do like what we got to do. And it had kind of lulled down enough where we felt comfortable like getting people back and forth. And we're sitting in the back of this bus with our flak vest and our helmets on and everything. And one guy says, if they make the call for everybody to go to the towers for defensive positions, and they don't start immediately playing Let the Bodies Hit the Floor by Drowning Pool, I'm gonna be disappointed. So, dark humor, fun things like that. Getting to know different units, different people, jokes made. Ever was his name? Yeah. He was kind of our class clown. So he was fun to poke fun at, and he went with it well.
So what is the stuff you brought then?
So the stuff I brought, back when I was a crew chief and we went on regular TDYs, we would occasionally had flight suits like the pilots wear. So those were my name tapes from that. So once you shut down Bliss, this one has a story to it. So there I was, fresh new kid, brand new out of tech school, like a month or two out of tech school, right? We're doing a launch on a jet and disconnecting external power is this hand signal, right? And I'm on headset and I'm talking to the pilots. The pilot says, okay, we're clear to go ahead and disconnect external power. And I go ahead and I give the thumbs up to the guy on the power card, right? And there's another guy that has to do the actual unplugging the cord from the jet. The guy at the power card gives me this. And I'm thinking, oh crap, he's seen something that I haven't, like a fire on an engine that I haven't noticed yet or something. I call the pilots, I'm like, hey, shut it down. I got the kill signal from my lead. And what makes this even worse is it was a group commander. So there's myself, there's my flight, there's the squadron, and then there's the group commander, and then there's the wing commander who's in charge of the entire base. So the group commander is in charge of all of maintenance. And so I'm like, all right, kill it, shut down engines. And my lead's like, what are you doing? And I walk over to my lead, I'm like, what are you doing? And I've got the group commander on headset, talk to me, ground, do we need to bail? Do we need to get out of here? What's going on? I'm like, hold on. So I go to my lead and he's like, what are you doing? Why are you shutting down engines? I was like, you gave me this. He's like, yeah, like the pull the cord signal. And I'm like, this is the pull the cord signal. And so he's like, give me your headset. And he pops on headset and explains to the group commander, like, we got a new kid here. We're sorry. Just give us a minute. Let's get restarted. So, and he still works there, and I still occasionally get called shut down. So, ISO docs. So the old ISO docs were the phase dock wings. 93, our base transitioned from F4s to the KC-135. Our base transitioned from the F4s to the KC-135. For a few years, the flight line and ISO docs were one shop. Everybody worked together, you know, and whenever an ISO bird went into the hangar, they just kind of like pulled a few people from the flight line and put them on the ISO bird. Mid-90s somewhere, they separated them out entirely. So that way, 6 guys plus 2 supervisors specifically, that's all they did were the phase inspections. When that happened, there were some jokes that, oh, you guys are gonna be indoor crew chiefs now. What a bunch of weenies. And the jokes went back and forth, and I guess for a couple of guys that ended up in a fist fight. So eventually the docs guys were like, you know what, yeah, we're the phase dock weenies. And so that's why they're the phase dock weenies. I don't know, when I got there in 2014, the guys in the shop at the time were like, we need a change, or one of them decided to go with the bearded dragons, leisurely efficient. We had a pet bearded dragon in the office for a few years too. Her name was Khaleesi. So that's the story on those two. 379th EAMXS, Expeditionary Aircraft Maintenance Squadron. That would be Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. So those are my deployments for that. 506 Expeditionary Air Refueling Squadron. That was our unit in Guam at Anderson Air Force Base. 451st EMXS. That was our unit in Kandahar. This is my current office patch maintenance operations flight. We've got PS&D who deals with the future, and then mock, who deals with the present, and then we've got analysis that deals with the past. So that's what we go with those. So PS&D, plan scheduling and documentation, they are the ones who look at scheduled dates for inspections and things like that. Maintenance Operations Center, we do the day-to-day tracking everything that's going on. PS&D tells us, hey, we've got these inspections coming up, let the flight liners know, or that happens. And then analysis, they go over month by month, the month behind us, and they're going through everything, write-ups, statusing of the jets. Every once in a while, I will get a message from them saying, hey, this doesn't jive, like this airplane flew in a broken status, why is this? Or this airplane cannot be statused while it's flying, or while it's doing this other inspection, kind of thing like that. So, and then we go back through and we fix those. This is our headset. This is a standard crew chief headset, and then we plug these into the comm cord that gets plugged into the jet. So, and that's how we ground communicate with pilots or each other while we're doing maintenance. So it's a big and important one. Communication is a big thing. Anytime we're moving flaps or we're moving flight controls, anything on the jet, we have to have someone on the ground as well, on a headset, to make sure you're clear, make sure nobody's going in up on a stand and putting hands where they shouldn't be. So in Kandahar, they have these they're called T-walls. They're giant concrete barriers, and they are everywhere. They separate everything. Like, people have their yards separated by fence here. Areas like motor pool and finance, they're gonna have a T-wall line between them. Everything's got T-walls between it. And that would be, some guys got some paint from I don't know where and did our Nebraska up on it. People put their unit, their deployed unit or their home station unit, people just put up their state representation on there. There wasn't really an authorization process to it. I mean, we asked, we checked, and we got a lot of and huh from leadership, and we asked some other units, and they're like, yeah, we just picked a blank T-wall and went with it. So, yeah, there was a lot of fun ones, a lot of places. Other units had them. So that was my unit, or my first team for first rotation in Kandahar as well. Kyle Fastenau and Connor Desimone. We called him Desi, just to mess with him. So that was my team first rotation there. Kandahar, they had a animal control, pest control there. A lot of cats, dogs loose on base, cause issues, rabies, who knows what, and sicknesses. So it's something they keep in track. Also, a lot of venomous snakes and scorpions. So they took care of all that. We would regularly make a field trip or a zoo trip to pest control. So that was fun. We got to play with the one time they had a puppy there, they had a couple of cats that they just hung around there. So we got to see the glass tanks with the snakes and the scorpions in them. It was fun because, like, you look at the scorpions one, we're like, where's all the scorpions? And they're like, watch this. And they hold up a UV flashlight, and all of a sudden there's just glowing dots everywhere. They're like invisible scorpions, but they glue under UV light. And they were really small. Like, the biggest one I saw was like the size of my thumbnail. They were very small, and they were very venomous. I think the snakes they had there were like one of the top 5 deadliest snakes in the world. So thank God I was there during wintertime and everything was hibernating. This is my team's second rotation. They were both from Tennessee, Cooper, Bradley. So that was, pardon my language, Fort Kick-Ass there. And that was just kind of a structure that units long before us had put together, these short T-walls and kind of thing, and put together, and just kind of it had the smoke pit, it had hangout, it had a loft with a couple of chairs and a little coffee table on it. Like, it wasn't something that we regularly took care of and cleaned. It was there. And if you wanted a clean spot, you dust it off the chair, kind of thing. So that was fun. That was that team's second rotation of Kandahar. And this photo, that was second rotation. That was all of day shift crew chiefs. there at the pest control. The guy kneeling next to the dog there, that's Sydney Dos Santos, he's from New Jersey Guard. He actually ended up adopting that dog and taking it home, which is a whole process, because from Kandahar, a puppy would get shipped to Germany or somewhere in Europe, a base in Germany, go through vaccinations, it'd go through 60 days of quarantine, and then after that 60 days of quarantine, it has to fly to the US to another military installation, spend another 60 days in quarantine, and get any updated required shots from there. So it is not an easy process. It is a long process. But Sid stuck through it, and yeah, he still got the dog. I still see him in photos with it on Facebook all the time.
So is there anything else you would like to add that we didn't cover?
Oh boy. I mean, you get me talking, I'll talk for hours.